We've put our fillets in and we've sanded it down nice and smooth so that we got a nice curve in there. So now all I'm doing is taking clear epoxy, just like we did tape on the bottom. I'm doing the same thing here. And I am saturating the surrounding wood. Don't want to puddle it up. Just want to make sure that we get some in that wood so that the cloth doesn't suck it back out again. Fairly cool day today, so we got a little bit more working time. Now the idea here is I've cut a piece of cloth that's going to go around here and come down to here, and then I'm going to do the same thing on that end. That'll give us, you know, a nice structural fit here and over here as well. I'm going to take advantage of the cool weather here, and we're going to do both sides at once. You want to make sure that you get that cloth really saturated. We're not going to want it dripping because this is going to be visible, right? So we don't want the cloth dripping, so we're going to take all that extra off of there. But I want to make sure that it's fully saturated. Lift it up and put it down. Again, you're just trying to get 2 or 3 inches on either side, because we're going to go ahead and glass the entire transom on this particular boat. There we go. Here's your glove. Make sure it's all down nice and firm, and that you don't have any air pockets underneath. So it's going to be a little tricky because you got a lot of curves going on here, but certainly doable. There. That's it. Now I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side. While that transom is setting up, I've gotten all this prepared up here, all scraped out and sanded, and we'll do up here as well. Again, you know, pretty much the same thing. A little bit more difficult because you're working in tighter corners. And I'm going to bring the glass down to, you know, roughly around here. I don't want to go too far down because I will put a piece of glass right down the middle that's about 5 inches wide. It'll give that center joint just a little bit more structural integrity there. And for right now, we're just doing the same thing we did up there, which is saturating the wood. There's going to be a lot more hand work up here. You're going to have to dig your hands in there and get them dirty, or the gloves, hopefully. And also, when we are putting the epoxy on this cloth, we're going to put it on heavier. A couple of reasons for that. First, you're not going to really be able to get back in there and do a lot of work. So you want to make sure that whatever glass you got in there, it's fully saturated with the fiberglass. Because the next thing we're going to do is put the full bottom roll of glass in here. And so we're not really want to mess with that before we do that. So we're going to put a little bit more on the little glass patches, and I'll show you those in just a second. If you don't have a small enough brush, you can always cut the handle off. These are just inexpensive, they call them chip brushes. They don't cost that much. And we probably go through a few hundred of them here a year anyway. Okay, so these patches are a little bit bigger than the last ones that we did. I'm going to come up a little bit further. Okay, so you're probably wondering why I didn't have to put a fillet coat on the inside of these corners. A couple reasons. First off, we are in fact going to put more epoxy on the cloth, so we should be able to get good adhesion there. And second, looks isn't that critical because this will all be decked over, right? And nobody's going to be looking up there. We'll have a deck here, we'll have a seat here, whatever it is, nobody's going to see it. Now, when I say that, you know, that's not a pass to do shoddy work. That's just telling you don't get crazy about it, because after it's on there, chances are nobody will ever see it again. Okay. All right, so I have cut a bunch of patches here that are about foot wide and about 5 inches up and down here. All right, so what we're going to do is put them in this as a series of patches in here, because if we try to lay one piece, because of the corner, it's going to keep puckering up on us. It'll be almost impossible to stay ahead of that. So we're going to do a series of patches. Doesn't really matter if you start at the top or the bottom. I like starting towards the bottom for one main reason. If I start at the bottom, I won't have my arms where I just put those patches, and hopefully I won't be pulling them out or getting epoxy all over my arms. Okay, so I'll start right down here at the bottom. And you can see the way my arms are getting in there. That's why I don't like to start up top. And what you're going to have to do is push the cloth down. Push down on either side, and that should take care of your air pockets down there. If not, then you didn't do a very good job on your fillet, because the fillet should not be down below that stem piece. Kind of defeats the purpose. All right, on to the next piece. Now these pieces that I'm putting in there can go either way, depending on how bad the curve is. If the curve's really bad and you can't get it in there without a pucker, then just go ahead and turn it around. And if you're concerned about sanding, then you can always make it a little bit smaller. But sanding is kind of an inevitable thing here, so I don't get too wrapped up in that. But I've learned over the years, if you just do a neat job while you're putting it on, you will save yourself hours of work later. Really, the only trick is learning how to push down two sides at once, and it's not that difficult. Again, just push down on the sides, because you're going to have little air pockets there. So just push down on the sides. And if you learned anything from the bottom while we're doing this, it should have been that you don't worry too much about the sanding, because when you sand and you put your next layer of epoxy over the top, all that milky stuff disappears. Yeah. All right. That's it. I'm just going to keep going up, and this will be done shortly. Okay, well that's about as simple as it can be. You see that I got into a little jam there, and I simply took a razor knife and slit the pucker and put it down one side on the other, and when I sand that down, it'll be nice and smooth. So now I'm just making sure that I got no drips, no runs, and no air pockets underneath. That's the important thing. You don't want any air pockets underneath there. So I'm about a foot past my inner stem here. That's about as far as I want to go, because again, like I said, I'm going to put about a 5-inch strip down the middle, and then I'm going to have 2 layers of cloth on it, and for a boat of this stature, that's more than enough. Should be plenty strong. Absolutely plenty strong. Okay, so what are my next steps? My next steps on this boat is I'm going to give this a few hours so it starts to set. I'm going to mix up a little bit of epoxy and some wood flour and fill all these little holes here so that when that gets dry enough, which will be a couple of days, I can sand all that down and we can get ready to put our layer of glass in here. Now there is one other thing down here by the transom that I want to talk about. Okay, so on the transom, we've done basically just a little bit past the transom nape. And that's great for now, because up there we're kind of really taking our time because we want it to come out looking nice. You know, for all you guys that are guys and gals that are going to be doing this in natural wood flavor, you really want to take your time and make that as good as you can make it. I don't like just putting gobs of thickened epoxy down and letting it dry, because sometimes it can bubble up. I mean, you get bad adhesion, it gets overheated. So you can see when we were putting our fillet down the side of this bed here, we stopped short. Well, because I just kind of figured we had done enough. But we still need that strategy so that our cloth can at least get to the middle of the boat and go up the sides of that nice and clean. So I still got a little bit of filler to do down here. And it's up to you whether or not you take that and you make the whole thing rise to the level. If you want to do as strong a joint there as possible, you'll make all of this rise up to the level of this so that your glass can go from one side to the other, and then the other one comes across there, and then it's, you know, that's as strong as you're going to get. You know, the other option here is to excuse me, is to do a fillet on both sides that's a little bit depressed or indented. And by doing that, when we do the bottom glass, we will go up the side and basically stop. We'll split the cloth and do part of the other side, and then we'll do the same thing coming this way. Then when all is said and done, we'll do a slight sanding on that and then just put a piece down the middle. That's probably the easiest, not necessarily the easiest, but it might come out the best looking. I'm really not a big fan of having big globs of thickened epoxy, so I'll probably just continue this right on down here, make my little round over, split the cloth, and then if I feel it needs it, I'll do another structural piece right down the middle. Okay, so I'm going to get all of that done, and next time we turn that camera on, we'll be laying the glass down the middle here.